Okay. So these are the coverage of the presentation. I'll be defining the terms like real estate, real property, redemption, terms that are related to
Mahina signal.
option. Mahina ba, ma'am?
Hindi, sa akin, hindi ko makita yung screen. Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay, you have salient points
Mabagyo na po, ma'am.
Oo nga eh. Sige, just go ahead.
on the sale of property. On the sale of the property, documents needed for the sale of the property, ordinary asset versus capital asset, and a case study. Now, this particular discussion would only fall after the payment of the estate tax. If the payment of estate tax, you're not yet done, wala pa po kayong dapat pag-usapan kung ibebenta at kanino mapupunta yung property. Okay, so let's now go in the definition. According to RA 9646, the Real Estate Service Act, real estate is defined as or refers to the land and all those items which are attached to the land, and it is the together with all functions or improvements on, above, below the ground. So here, in this example, as you could see the property in the background. So it's on top of a particular hill. So anything below, anything on high is part of the property. And these are the grounds, these are part of the property. Tawag nila dito sa taas, ito yung tinatawag nila right. That's why you will observe even in Makati or in cities where there are condominiums or malls, you could see particular big billboards. And the property owner of the land owns that particular airspace, the air right. So if they put their billboards there, they pay rent on the property owner because that is part of the air right or part of the real estate. Now, real property, according to the same law, includes all the rights, interests, and benefits related to the ownership of real estate. That's what I was mentioning. Supposing under your land, there is a treasure. Would you be entitled for the treasure? The answer is yes and no. It is entitled provided it falls under your particular property. But if it is mineral like gold, according to the Constitution, that is still owned by the state. However, supposing underneath your property, they will pass through a particular tube for water, could indicate a particular request and you're entitled for any service that you're entitled when they use that below your property. When a certain tunnel or that particular improvement is placed under your property. Just like particular post in Meralco or Napocor, and you have property and there are certain golden poste that as part of your property. Okay, redemption. Buying back one's property after a judicial sale or the right of redemption. If there are property, supposing the decedent has a mortgage and that's not been paid, and it's almost that he could not pay it, but he has still 1 year to redeem the property. Kaya meron right of redemption. In other words, the bank, even though it's already foreclosed, could not just sell the property, otherwise they could be sued. They have 1 year. The property owner has the right for 1 year in this particular foreclosed property, not to buy back the property. Now, for disposing these properties, who are these? These are licensed real estate broker. And these are documents. What are these? You are, as broker, we are the ones who are one of the signatories on the deed of sale. Of course, this presentation, this is not the selling of property, but it's just similar. We execute. So, what is a real estate broker? A duly registered and licensed natural person who, for a professional fee, commission, and other variable consideration, acts as an agent of a party in a real estate transaction to offer, advertise, solicit, lease, promote, mediate, negotiate, or effect the meeting of the minds on the sale, purchase, exchange, mortgage, lease, or joint venture, or other similar transaction on real estate or any interest therein. So pwede palang exchange, mortgage, and lease. In other words, supposing if the property owner asks you as a broker to lease the property, and you're entitled to commission sa lease, like 1 month payment. A real estate appraiser. I myself is also a licensed real estate appraiser. A duly registered and licensed natural person who, for a professional fee, compensation, or other variable consideration, performs or renders or offers to perform services in estimating and arriving at an opinion of or acts as an expert on real estate values, such services of which shall be finally rendered by the preparation of the report in acceptable written form. Nowadays, because of COVID, I'm constrained to move to appraise a property for simple reason of health. Sabi ko, ma'am, wala pa po COVID anti-vaccine. If I go there in a different city, I may contract COVID. So my apologies. Although I was referred to go there to have a client, but due to COVID, I could not go to appraise a property. Bikikitain sana, problema, kikita ka nga, magkasakit ka naman, mas malaki papalawal. So I forgo for that. I just wait. My apologies, ma'am, but very thankful that you consider me to be your appraiser. Real estate assessor. This in the picture is also my good friend. He is the city assessor of Pasay City. Now, the city assessor right now, and this is his wife, the woman. She's a tax mapper. The city assessor, if you become a city assessor, the requirement nowadays that he or she should be a holder of a licensed real estate appraiser. Ganun na yun. Ganun. Kasi, what is the work of an real estate assessor? These are people working in the local government units who assess or the appraisal of properties of the residential, the commercial properties, and as such, including plants, equipment, machineries, essentially for taxation purposes. They're the ones trying to collect money. Of course, the income generation, where the payment is being paid, is to the Office of the Treasury. And lastly, only in the Philippines, they have this licensed real estate consultant. In United States, they don't have a licensed real estate consultant. Usually up to licensed real estate appraiser. According to licensed real estate consultant, by definition, is a duly registered and licensed natural person who, for a professional fee, compensation, and other valuable consideration, offers or renders professional advice and judgment, the acquisition, enhancement, preservation, utility, or disposition of lands or improvements thereon, and the consumption, planning, management, and development of real estate projects. Modestly speaking, this is the most recent license I acquired. I passed the exam only last December, and we also have our revalida. We were asked to write a feasibility study in my particular feasibility study, my proposal is a condominium building, a 28 or 29-story building, more or less with a project cost around 1 billion pesos. What are then the salient points on the property? Every property is unique. May history yan, that's number one. Even in the shape and the size. But you have always to go to the background or the history of the property. From there, you would know what happened to that property. For sales of big property, if you're an investor, always check the history of the property. Otherwise, baka yung property na yun ay bogus, that and void yung puno. That's why every property is unique. A property could be ordinary asset or capital asset for tax purposes. In other words, if it's used for businesses, for trade, which I will discuss later, it is considered ordinary asset. And under ordinary asset, the taxpayer will have to pay 12% back on top of the capital gain or the EWP, around 1.5% up to 5%. Usually the capital gain is for the capital asset. Capital asset is for properties that are used only for residential purposes. And the capital gains tax is 6%. Now, they don't have but. The reason they are distinguishing capital asset and ordinary asset in the before and after trade law is for the exemption as well. Now, government agencies involved in the registration on the sale and among other properties are the following. Number one, Bureau of Internal Revenue. Number two, local government unit. And letter C is Land Management Bureau. Land Management Bureau, before this, we call the Bureau of Land or
Yun.
commercial, agricultural, and among others. Patent. Under the local government unit, the following offices the property owners have to consider. The Register of Deeds. The Register of Deeds is the gatekeeper or the holder where all your PCT or CCT are stored. Then the Office of the City Assessor is where your tax declaration. And the Office of the Treasurer, because you have to pay for the real estate or real property tax. Even in the cancellation of mortgage, you have to pay at the Office of the Treasurer. Now, what then are the procedures of the sale of the property? I classified it into two. Under normal transaction,
Normal transaction.
incident. When you say may incident, may namatay. Ito, may may-ari. Usually, if you are not aware, if you're the property owner, you're not sure how much is the market value of the property or how much you're going to sell it, you hire an appraiser. In determining the market value, determining how much will be the selling price. Then, in order to sell the property, you hire a broker. In instances, if a property owner would not hire a broker, the property owner could sell directly. Although a problem nowadays, it's been a rampant practice, the property owner hire colorum brokers. Kaya nakapagbebenta. Kasi ang basic question kasi is the trust of the property owner. And there is such law, there's no such law that could punish them. Wala pang ganung batas eh. That's why there is a need for this
Yes.
to the practitioner's side. Ano unfair kasi? Number 3, negotiate with the prospective buyers of the property. Now, if the property owner are in good faith with the brokers or the real estate brokers, and that is willing to pay for the commission, the brokers or the practitioners would try to, most of the time, help facilitate the transaction. Of course, who should be dealing? It's between the buyer and the seller. It is not supposed to be the agent or the broker. It is usually the decision maker, the buyer and the seller. When the meeting of the minds has been reached between the buyer and the seller, and the buyer agreed to pay for the property, then the execution of the deed of absolute sale, which means cash siya. If it is not cash, may deferred payment siya, that is conditional sale. However, if the amount that is conditional sale is more than 50, around 50% of the total contract price, you have the property owner have to pay for the capital gain tax. Now, in the after the deed of sale has been executed, it has to be notarized. However, you have to be careful before you notarize it because there is a particular penalty. So within
30 days.
Now, what are those? In order for the BIR to facilitate this, what are the taxes to be paid? The capital gains tax, or the EWT, the doc stamp, and the VAT for ordinary asset. Pag capital asset, you have capital gains tax. And for the LGU, you have the transfer tax. It varies depending on the policy of or the ordinance of the LGU. Then the cancellation of the old PCT or CCT. And this could only be done after the BIR has approved. Nabayaran yung taxes sa kanila, then it will issue you for the cancellation. So the property owner, the new seller, the buyer would go there for the cancellation of the PCT or CCT. Then the Register of Deeds will issue what we call the CAR, Certificate Authorizing Registration. Then the new title is being released. But it will take around 2 months to 6 months, more or less. Lalo na with. Then the property owner will have to go to the assessor's office to process for the tax declaration. Supposing you are a buyer and you bought your property to a developer, you could always check if the title is already transferred to you, if there is already a tax declaration. Because that's another proof of ownership, the tax declaration and the PCT. Now, under the DVDCDent, again, payment of the estate tax. Ang premise natin dito, the estate tax has already been paid. And of course, if the estate tax has been paid already, the property owner will have to hire a genetic engineer for the estate of the property. If there are several heirs, then they have to subdivide the property. Pwede naman kasi, diretso na to the new buyer. Provided walang reklamo on other heirs. That's so that in the title itself, it will be already on the name of the, we call this, of the new owner. But you don't have to forget to pay for the taxes. Di pa bayad si BIR. Then extrajudicial settlement. So extrajudicial settlement means it is settled outside the court. Execution of the deed of sale, the payment of taxes, so similar siya. Ang pinakaiba lang dito, with dissident, nabayaran yung estate tax. Now, on the sale of the property, of course, the absolute deed of sale has to be signed and it has to be notarized. Then the seller transfers ownership of the property to the buyer. The deed of absolute sale should be signed by both parties. It will be
With the witnesses.
absolute owner of the property. However, there are cases that there is a one-track absolute deed of sale. Hindi bumibili yung buyer. Meron ganun, nakatago yung buyer. Yung after going
Nagluloko yun.
to payment of expenses such as capital gains tax, dock stamp, registration fees, and transfer tax. Okay. Then the seller will turn over the original copies of transfer of certificate of title, convenience certificate of title, tax declaration, clearance for both land and improvement, tax clearance for condominium unit and parking. Usually, pagka ganyan, kung lalo na kung cash pay, so the money is already there in the bank. Pag binigay yung property, yung pang-document on the account of the seller. Yung pinakasimple yun, safe pa yun. And the bank would facilitate. For example, at Land Bank, kayang-kaya na na-Rainer yun. There you have the buyer must also pay a new tax declaration, and when the new tax declaration is released, the former owner's code obligation will be terminated. So these are the documents needed on the sale of the property. Certified true copy of the transfer certificate of title. All of these you have to bring along at BIR. Kasi lalo na yung proof of payment of real property tax. That's why they have to apply for tax clearance, which means they already paid all those taxes due to the government. Then the certificate of registration from the Bureau of Internal Revenue. So ito yung, and this certificate authorizing registration would be annotated at the tax declaration. That is part of the revenue regulations of BIR. Now, mind you, even certificate authorizing registration has been, for some syndicate, for example, in Makati, but the car is the Muntinlupa. I have a case. So you will be surprised. There's so many hula-hula in real estate.
Yes.
Land, the subdivision. Right? Then letter C, the owner or broker must procure these documents to the office. Certified copy of tax declaration, certified true copy of tax declaration on building or improvement, certified true tax declaration from certified true copy of tax declaration. Now, there are cases, there are certain property owners that in their tax declaration, nakalagay doon no improvement. But you will be surprised na nakatayo hotel. How come it happened like that? Perhaps you could use your imagination. What happened in the process? And if you're the broker, don't sell the property because you will have a big problem later on. Because there has been a fraudulent action that has happened. Because remember, the taxes are paid two different taxes. One is in improvement and the other one is on land. Dalawa yung taxes na binabayaran doon. The certificate of non-improvement the property is bare and without structures such as a house or a building. I remember when we were asked to sell a property at Coastal Road. There is a big property there. And a big land, a big building is constructed there. Right now, it is now part of the terminal. And that land is being leased at that time by a big mall owner. And they're not able to pay. Ang arrangement nila doon, sige, pagagawa namin yung improvement, but they will have to pay also the taxes on the improvement. And later on, hindi na nagbayad ng taxes sa improvement si Leslie. Ang nagbabayad, nagdemandahan sila. Eh, ang pagbabayad kasi ng taxes, both on the improvement and on the land. Okay.
Ako nagloko ni anak ko.
Yes. As I mentioned, these are properties used for business inventory. For example, yung sa mga developers, yun is part of the ordinary asset. If the property is being marked as part of the depreciation of a corporation, that is considered an ordinary asset. If it is used for sale, it is different. Kaya nga pag magbebenta ng property, at hiningan kayo ng picture, ay pinapaupahan nyo pala, pero nakadeclare sa residential, delikado. Kaya dapat, huwag pupipicturean, wala din yung nakalagay for lease. Otherwise, papasok si ordinary asset. Ordinary assets are subject to 1.5% to 6%, 1.5% to dock stamp, and 12% for value added tax. What then is ordinary asset versus capital asset? Under Revenue Regulation 7-2003, Section 2. Capital assets shall refer to all real properties by a payer, whether or not connected with his trade or business, which are not included among the real properties considered as ordinary asset. Ibig sabihin, hindi niya ito pa rin nangyaynegosyo. These are usually his residential. Ordinary assets shall refer to all real properties specifically excluded from the definition of assets. So what I mentioned earlier in 1, 2, 3, 4 is the same thing. Ayan. Inventory, use in business, depreciation, and sale and debt. Ito yung long version of the previous slides. Before the trade law, under the National Section 109, VAT exemptions include, among others, the following transactions. Lease a residential unit with monthly rental of 12,800. So, except yan. Association dues, membership dues, fees, and other assessments and charges collected by homeowners associations, condominium corporation. So, before trade law, these are VAT exemptions. However, under RA 10963, beginning by January 1, 2021, VAT exemptions shall only apply to sale of real property sold for sale to customers and hold for lease in the ordinary course of trade or business, sale of real property utilized for socialized housing, and sale of house and lot and other residential dwellings with a threshold reduced to 2 billion pesos. So ordinary asset exempted from, but if residential lot with selling price of 1.9 million pesos or less. Before trade law, right now it's 5 million. Residential house and lot of condominium or condominium with selling price of 3.1 million or less before trade law, and now it's 2 million. And under January 2018 to December 31. Ordinary asset will be classified if you are habitually engaged, which means you are registered with HLURB or HUDBC, or right now is known as DSUD. And at least 6 real estate sale transactions a year. For ordinary asset for the EWT, If the selling price is 1.5 is 500,000 and below, the EWT is 1.5%. But if the selling price is more than 500,000 up to 2 million, it is 3%. And 2 million and above is 5%. And of course, the 6% is capital gain tax. Those who are not engaged habitually in real estate.